Morning, Thursday the 28th of May, and today you might recognise, some of you may recognise this airport, Lockhart River. This is about as much of Lockhart River as I've seen. Flown through it a couple of times, and that's about it. I'm looking forward to actually going up and spending a bit of time with the mob up there. We've had a number of students from this area over time, and Reverend David Thompson, who was the first principal of Wantot College, is actually an initiated man of this mob, and he goes here fairly regularly. This morning I thought I'd go to the Old Testament again because I've been following my daily devotion book, and like many of them, as I've mentioned a couple of times, tends to spend a lot of time in the Gospels and the New Testament and the Psalms, but doesn't go to some of the other wonderful places in the Old Testament. Today I thought I'd go to Job 42 and just read Job's response to the Lord when the Lord finally speaks to him after 40 very long chapters. 42 verse 1. Then Job answered the Lord, "I know, Lord, that you are all-powerful, that you can do everything you want. You ask how I dare question your wisdom when I am so very ignorant. I talked about things I did not understand, about marvels too great for me to know. You told me to listen while you spoke and try to answer your questions. In the past, I only knew what others had told me, but now I have seen you with my own eyes. So I am ashamed of all I've said and repent in dust and ashes." It's interesting because through the entire book of Job, this righteous man who's done no wrong is picked upon by the enemy to suffer. God allows it to happen, saying, "This man will not turn on me." And he is plagued, he is grieved, he is ill, and his mates come along and they drive him nuts, telling him all is wonderfully theologically correct. This is why you are suffering, Job, and missing the point that Job's suffering and he needs somebody to sit and listen and to weep with him. And of course, we even towards the end of the middle section of the book, we have this young firebrand preacher gets up and puts Job in his place. And it's interesting that when God finally speaks, God does not answer any of Job's questions. We're still left with mystery. Suffering is not something that we can find an answer for. We all, when we are suffering, pray that the suffering ends. But suffering needs comfort. Suffering needs solace. And we only find that in God's presence. And here, poor old Job, he repents even though we're not told anything he needs to. He's not done anything specifically. But he recognises that his relationship with God is not where it needs to be. He does not understand. He's realised he's tried to understand, tried to be smarter than God, tried to explain God away. And it's a trap that all of us have, including some very senior Christians. I've known people who for years have been wonderful explaining things, and then they end up relying on their explanations rather than on the person of God. As I've explained a number of times to classes over the years, I can tell you everything about my wife. It doesn't mean that you know her. It doesn't mean sometimes that I know her. This is the joy of being in a relationship with another human being. We cannot read minds. Sometimes it might seem like it, but no, we can't. We need to live in relationship, need to communicate, need to listen. When it comes to God, it's even more important. We need to sit and listen, appreciate the wonder of what he's given us. Like, this environment here in Lockhart is absolutely stunningly beautiful. Well, it was on this day anyway. But we just need to live in that relationship to realise that God is much, much bigger than us. This, as I was talking about yesterday, the Last Supper, the disciples they still hadn't got what Jesus was on about. But Jesus says, I'm going to give you the gift of the Spirit anyway. I'm going to keep you in relationship with the Father. This is the lesson we need to learn. As one old cynical atheist, in a moment of jest, he suggested the answer to life, the universe, and everything was 42, just to be something completely meaningless and absurd. Well, the answer is actually here in chapter 42, that we need to come to recognise God for who he is. And in doing that, to recognise that we can't understand everything. We'll still try. And sometimes it's important to try to learn so we can explain to people who are struggling. But ultimately, the answer to pain, the answer to suffering, the answer to life, the universe and everything isn't a formula, isn't an explanation. It's actually finding our place, our right place in relationship to the Creator of all. May you find that. Lord, help us to see who we are in you. May it not be as hard as what Job has been through. But for many of us, it does at times feel like that. Let us find joy in you, we pray. Let us find new life and hope now and always. Amen.